e nā putu. A ino I ka wai awa awa. A ohe hope e hoki mai ai. As Kamehameha cried across the field of battle to his soldiers. Forward, my young brothers and sisters, and drink of the bitter waters of battle. There is no turning back until victory is secured. These fair islands have once again become a battleground, and the time has come for us to marshal our forces and march to glorious victory. And march to glorious victory. It seems your fighting spirit has been sapped before you've even taken the field. You mustn't lose heart, my friends, especially when the cost of failure is so dire. I of course speak of the fight for the very soul of our culture, for the preservation of our history. The Haole elite would have us grovel at their feet, shackled to their civilized way of life. We must stand strong. Perhaps you think I am too delicate and soft-hearted for this task. I have seen this kingdom through 6 monarchs and 5 governments. I have preserved the legends and stories of my forefathers. I have served the needs of my community in every area required of me. I promise you, I am the woman to lead us in this crusade. I am Emma K. Metcalf Beckley Nakuina, and I am Hawaiian. I was born into this destiny in Manoa Valley, 1847. A child of 2 cultures. My father was an English sugar planter, Theophilus Metcalf. He was a good man. But my mother was Chiefess Kaili Kapuolono, one of many ali'i, from a long and proud family line. Naturally, it was my lot in life to continue my mother's chiefly duties, even in an age when the power of the chiefesses was waning. I received my early education at Sacred Hearts Academy, Punahou School, and later Mills Seminary in Oakland, California. I married young, Frederick William K. Beckley, in 1867. He was a Hapahaole whose family had long served the ali'i. Frederick himself continued that tradition as Chamberlain to King Kamehameha V and later King Kalakaua. I became a great favorite of the kings myself and later received the immense honor of being named godmother to Princess Ka'iulani and served as a lady-in-waiting to Queen Ka'iulani. Frederick died early in 1881. Rather than waste my life as a grieving widow, I set to work in my newly appointed task as head of the Hawaiian National Library. And it was there that I met the man who would become my second husband, Moses Nakuina. His passion, determination, and intelligence were impossible to ignore. I watched his career carefully as he advanced from mere janitor to messenger to copyist and eventually to deputy of the Registrar of Conveyances. Moses and I were married in September of 1867. Moses was a wealth of knowledge in all matters Hawaiian and published a number of celebrated novels, many kupono, to those who loved stories. The aim of his stories was to rekindle interest and pride in our cultural heritage, a difficult yet crucial task. We lived in a tumultuous world of underhanded politics, shifting governments, and reluctant need to transition from the Hawaiian way of life to that of the civilized world. With the closing of the last Hawaiian language schools, the quality of spoken and written Hawaiian began to degenerate. As a result, we began to accept the stereotype of our culture as unintellectual, a tendency supported by our difficulties in Western schools. Never then was it more important for us to reach back into the ancient traditions and embrace and support the highest educational achievements of our ancestors. And so I threw myself headlong into the preservation of everything Hawaiian. because my knowledge of Hawaiian genealogy was so extensive, I was elected Commissioner of Private Ways and Water Rights in the District of Honolulu. I served as the first female judge in the territory, and I was lauded as an expert in the ill-known historical places in town. The American haole was no fool, however, and in the waning days of the kingdom, he quickly realized that by seizing control of the history of a place, especially one with such a rich tapestry of legends as Hawaii, he could gain dominance over a populace. And so he attacked our literature, our arts, and defiled the sacred halls of our past, our museums. The contest for control of Hawaii's galleries and archives began when King Kamehameha V first opened the Hawaiian National Museum in 1875, housed in the upper room of the Ali'iolani Hale. It contained some of our most priceless and sacred artifacts. Under the leadership of Charles Reed Bishop and later a parade of missionary descendants, the museum suffered financially and never grew to a place of prominence in our community. It was to my great relief when Walter Murray Gibson wrested control of the museum away from its corrupt leadership. Although a haole himself, Mr. Gibson worked with King Kalakaua to spread a spirit of national and cultural pride. He did the first sensible thing in the institution's history when he appointed me the first native curatrix of the Hawaiian National Museum. Together, Mr. Gibson and I pursued the museum's interests with enthusiasm and imagination. Because we supported Hawaiian nation for the Hawaiian people, lies and slanders were spread about our actions. Chief among these controversies occurred when a museum collector sailed on the maiden voyage of the Kaimi Loa, the first and only ship in the Royal Hawaiian Navy. It may be true that King Kalakaua's aim in this voyage was to wrest control of independent Samoa away from the clutches of Imperial Germany. It may also be true that he wished to add that nation to a Polynesian confederation with the Kingdom of Hawaii at its nucleus. But the possibility that a museum representative was directly involved with any sort of political intrigue is ludicrous, regardless of one woman's opinion. The perpetrators of the Bayonet Constitution of 1887 wasted no time in seizing the museum for themselves, removing me as curatrix, and gutting its funding. Its collection was absorbed by the newly created Bernice Pauahi Bishop Museum. A member of the royal family and granddaughter to King Kamehameha I, Princess Bernice Pauahi was a Hawaiian ali'i of celebrated achievement. Upon her death, her husband sought to preserve the multitude of artifacts that she had collected from the sacred line of Hawaiian royalty. The museum, which opened on the ground of the Kamehameha Schools for Boys in 1892, would protect and display these cultural relics. I could respect Mr. Bishop's aim, but I could not accept that he did not consider me for the position of curatrix. Instead, he hired William Tufts Brigham, my former Punahou teacher and a haole of volatile temperament. Dr. Brigham and I immediately found ourselves on opposite sides of this ideological battlefield. This brings me to the event of a particularly distressing morning in 1897. Myself and 3 other ladies, Hawaiians of the highest respectability, and 5 little children were sitting in the shade of the Bishop Museum, enjoying the fine showing put on by the naval men drilling on the campus. Chairs had been offered to us by a young man. He placed them on a plot of manie grass adjoining the museum. In a few minutes, a Portuguese workman came and ordered us away from the place, saying he was acting on Dr. Brigham's instructions. Because the gates of the campus were frequently thrown open to the public during the occasion of such public showings, we paid him no attention and ignored his orders. In a fury, he suddenly seized my chair and spilled me to my knees. He grabbed my arm, pulled me to my feet, and said, "If you do not go yourself, I make you go. Dr. Brigham don't allow anyone to set on this grass." Had we been white ladies, Dr. Brigham no doubt would have paid us the courtesy of appearing in person and asking us to leave his precious plot of grass. But being only Kanaka women, why we must be rudely hustled off as common tramps. Surely it was never considered, never contemplated by Mrs. Kawahi Bishop that this institution created for the benefit of every child of Hawaii should be used to sustain and harbor a man who invariably vilified, decried, ran down her own race. The board of directors of the museum received my strongly worded description of those events. Dr. Brigham had the decency to recognize the vulgarity of his ways and resign as curator. Naturally, I immediately put my name forward to fill the vacant position. Imagine my rage when Mr. Bishop rejected my application and insisted that Dr. Brigham return not only as curator, but as a museum's director. He stated that while Dr. Brigham's account of the event may not be altogether true, it is safe to say the same about mine. He described me as a person of hot temper, strong prejudice, and having the mistaken idea that I was competent to fill the position held by Dr. Brigham. Clearly what he meant to say, Mrs. Nakuina is not to fill the position. She is a Naka and a woman. This was not the first time I was denied the respect I deserved because of my race and gender. Is it common knowledge that in 1874, I was one of the first women admitted to the Hawaiian Historical Society? Or that my articles were published by Thomas Thrum's Hawaiian Annual, Paradise of the Pacific, and even The Friend? Or that the bulk of translation of Thrum's lauded Fornander's collection of Hawaiian antiquities and folklore fell on my shoulders long before he was attached to the project? No. Each time I clawed my way forward, I was met with equally tenacious resistance. For my efforts, I have been branded an old hag, a thief, a vile woman, and even physical and moral leper. Unlike many women who are happy to give up and surrender the struggle and resign themselves to a life of domesticity under the new Hawaiian regime, I continued a war of guerrilla war of attrition against my foes. At the turn of the century, a new threat was posed by Mr. Thomas Thrum and his associate Mr. William Westervelt. Working in tandem, they published a number of insulting tourist brochures that depicted the wild Polynesian as a curio to be observed, and the islands as an unspoiled paradise ripe for American imperialism. Yes, these men studiously contributed to Hawaiian ethnography, but what they fail to understand is that history is derived not from statistics, but from the legends of a place. The very word legend often makes learned men recoil. In most European cultures, legends are treated as fairy tales. In Hawaii, however, they are deeply intertwined in the fabric of our history. I sought to prove this in 1904 by publishing my own brochure, Hawaii, its people, and their legends. Every nook, every cliff, valley, and plain has its legend. And I told as many as I could. You, sir, are you familiar with the Nakuina Pali, not far from here? Have you had the pleasure of visiting it? It is beautiful, is it not? And you, ma'am, are you familiar with the history of the Pali? Can you tell me about it?
That's where Kamehameha overthrew his enemy.
Exactly. The Battle of Nu'uanu was fought there in King Kamehameha's day. Many brave Oahuans were driven over the Pali to their deaths on the rocks below. And you, sir, can you tell me a personal story about said Pali? No. I thought not. Mr. Westervelt would describe it as you would, as a significant feature of Hawaii's physical beauty. Mr. Thrum would describe it as you did, as a site of a famous historical battle. No doubt he could tell you the exact number of those that perished there, by what means they were killed, and by what process said instruments were fashioned. But I will tell you a story about my family. After Kamehameha's great victory, a young Oahuan chiefess, married to one of Kamehameha's generals, looked about at the carnage around her, at the people she had no doubt known and cared for. Instead of mourning their loss, she chose to honor their memory. She named her newborn son Kahea'ananui, the great heap of the slain. Her husband angrily brought her before the king and explained what she had done. The chiefess did not beg for mercy. She calmly awaited his verdict. Kamehameha, the great warrior king who had just slain so many Oahuans that day, merely smiled in silent approval of her memorial and sent her on her way. That chiefess, Kalani Kupaulakea, was my great-grandmother. To me and countless Hawaiians like me, the Pali is more than a beautiful landmark. It is more than the site of bloody battle. It is a place of courage in the face of grief. It is a place of connection, of family, of loyalty. It is a place of stories. And it is because of the story of my great-grandmother's strength in defiance that I am who I am today. These stories are not valuable because they extract from the past some ethnographic present tense of Hawaiian essence, but because they point to a moral, an imperative, a course of action, and therefore speak to Hawaiians and others about the present and future of Hawaii and its people. It is often said that the voice that shouts the loudest is the one least heard. I have never been shy about expressing my misgivings about the way my home is changing. But is that so wrong? Is it not in our best interests to fight for the things we believe in? I believe in these islands. I believe in my people. Imua e nā poki'i, a inu I ka vai awa, a ohe hope e ho'i mai ai. Forward, my young brothers and sisters. We Kanakaua must press forward to assert our rights and defend our inheritance so that the green mountains of our islands and the spirits of our forefathers will continue to smile on us for generations to come. Mahalo.